Something I've heard a lot of people say, a lot of students say, is I have a bad memory, or I would be better at this if I had a better memory, or I just can't remember that person's name because I have a bad memory. Is that even true? Can you have a bad memory? And if you do have a bad memory, maybe this is the more important question, can you do anything about it? What can you do if you have a bad memory? Can you improve it? So that's what we're going to talk about in today's episode of Elevate. What is memory? How does it work? And most importantly, what can you do to improve it? I'm Joshua Olson, co-founder of Elevate. I'm also assistant professor and assistant program director of nurse anesthesiology. And Elevate exists for one reason, and that's to help you be successful in your CRNA program and help you pass the board exam on the first try. So what is memory? Memory is the process of taking information, encoding it, storing it, and then retrieving it. It's taking information in, right, through your senses usually, saving it for later, and then being able to access it at a later time. Those three parts are what make up a memory. Encoding, storage, and retrieval. You have to have all three to have a memory. We'll take a look at each part and see if there's any way that we can understand it better so then we can manipulate it to maybe improve it and work on your memory, make it better. The first part of memory is encoding. And that's the idea that you're taking information in, usually through your senses, and then your body takes that information and changes it into some sort of biological thing, right? Some chemical or some sort of code that it writes, and so it can imprint it later, right? It's transforming the light that's coming into your eye and the colors that come through and changes that into some sort of chemical or electrical signal, right? And so it can be stored later. That's called encoding. The second process of forming a memory is storage. So you encoded that memory. Maybe you looked outside the window and you saw a pretty red cardinal out there, and then your body took that information in, it encoded it by turning it into some sort of chemical or electrical signal, and then it stores it somewhere, puts it in a file cabinet for later so that you can access it. It imprints it somewhere in your brain or somewhere in your body so you can have that information later. And that's the last step, is pulling it out later. This is the retrieval process. It's not really a memory unless you can retrieve it, right? Be able to pull it out and access it. This is the process of saying, oh, yesterday I saw a red cardinal outside my window. It's to be able to pull that information forward. Those are the three steps: encoding, storage, and retrieval of a memory. A neurologist probably would want to add a lot more to this discussion about memory, but for our conversation today, that's enough to get an understanding of how a memory works. But here's the important question we want to answer is, are you stuck with what God gave you? The memory, the ability that you have, can you change it? Well, the great news is you have something called neuroplasticity. That's the ability to change and shape your memory. Well, not just your memory, other things too, but your memory is definitely moldable, it's shapeable, it's trainable, like a muscle. You can actually improve your memory. If you've read the book Moonwalking with Einstein by Joshua Foer, I hope I'm saying his name right, Joshua Foer, it's a great book. It talks about the process of these memory Olympians. They do these crazy projects where they have these contests where they have to memorize a deck of cards in random order, or who can do it the fastest, right? Or they're given 125 pictures of random people, random faces, and random names, and they have to memorize them. Or they're given a poem they've never seen before, and they have to memorize it in 10 minutes. These crazy feats that they do. Well, Joshua Foer, he's this writer. He decides to start following these people around, and he realizes that he can actually start doing this. And he actually eventually, just a regular guy, right? He's not some sort of special memory person, just a regular guy. And he eventually wins the USA Memory Olympics, right? So very impressive. So your memory is moldable and shapeable. So how do we do it? How do we improve our memory? Well, let's go step by step from the three different parts of making a memory. And we'll talk about each one and how you can improve on each one of those steps. The first being encoding, right? This is the idea that you're taking information in through your senses and turning it into some sort of, piece of energy or chemical or something, translating into some sort of biological form. Well, to improve this process, you need focus. You need to pay attention to what it is that's around you, or whatever it is you're trying to learn or understand, right? This idea of really dialing in or focusing in on something allows you the chance to really perceive it in a new way or a much more meaningful way. You have unlimited amount of information coming at you at any given moment, right? but it's the things that you focused on that are going to form a memory, right? All the information that's around you, the way something smells, the feel of your clothes on your skin, the lighting on the bookshelf, all that isn't going to be encoded in your memory forever, right? It's the things that you focus on. The fancy word for this nowadays is mindfulness, right? Being present in that moment and saying, I'm focused on this thing, and I'm really going to focus on remembering this thing. If you meet somebody for the first time and they tell you their name, if you focus on what they say, their name is Josh, I'm going to remember that his name is Josh, you're much more likely to remember it. But if you're just kind of blowing around and just hanging out and you don't pay attention, you don't focus on that information, then you're much less likely to remember it. So focus is the first thing that you can change. Really, really focus when it's time to study. Shut off all your notifications, put your phone away, take your smartwatch off, turn off all the sound effects on your computer or phone or whatever. When it's time to study, focus on what you're going to be studying. You want to be very, very mindful during that time. How about the second part of forming a memory? Storage. Is there any way you can improve that? Well, there is. There's lots of them. The one we'll talk about today is sleep. Did you know that sleep is very closely tied to memory and your ability to remember something? Actually, there's a lot of research out there that says that how much sleep you get each night is very closely related to how well you do on your exams. So a good night's sleep is a way to process information. Your brain kind of dumps out all the things it doesn't need anymore, all the information that's not meaningful. It starts to reorganize the things that are meaningful and put them in certain places to store them. So getting a good night's sleep is one of the most valuable things that you can do to improve your memory. And I'm sure you notice this. If you have a crummy night's sleep, your ability to remember and engage with the world around you really is impacted. So a good night's sleep is one way you can really improve your memory. The last part of memory formation is retrieval. And this is one that we can really manipulate and change and grow over time. Your brain has this, like I mentioned before, this neuroplasticity, right? And so as you start to retrieve information, especially as you retrieve it more and more frequently, you start to build new pathways to that information. Or maybe the brain moves it to a new place that's easier to get to. I don't know. But the idea is that your brain develops a new way to get that information more quickly, right? So if I'm trying to remember that the blood gas partial coefficient of isoflurane is 1.4, right? That's a nice piece of information to remember. If I read that and remember that and think about that, and if I continually pull it up and every day I'm thinking about that, right? My brain's going to say, oh, this information is important. I'm going to make a bigger, faster road to this information in this guy's brain, right? He needs to get this information a lot. And you'll find that it gets faster and faster and easier to retrieve that information the more frequently you do it. So this is something called spaced repetition. We talk a lot about this at Olivate, about repeating information over and over and over again to learn it for your long-term memory. Because your brain actually makes new pathways. It actually puts the information somewhere where you can get to it quickly and easily. And you know this is true. If you're with somebody that you use their name all the time, it comes to you like that, right? It's no problem saying their name. But if you're with someone that you see them very infrequently, you're like, oh, what's their name? What's their name? And then maybe you recall it, maybe you won't. Maybe you need to ask them their name because you don't remember. But if you say it over and over and over again, or see them every day, it becomes like just part of you. You don't have to think about it anymore. This is neuroplasticity. This is the beautiful part of spaced repetition. Over and over and over again, repeating something puts that in a place where you can access it quickly. I have a whole episode on spaced repetition, but we talk about it all the time at Olivate. So if you think you have a bad memory, don't despair. You can improve it. It's like any muscle. You can work it and get better at it. All three components of a memory are changeable. You can use your focus and your mindfulness to improve the encoding process. You can get a good night's sleep every night to improve your storage process. And you can practice spaced repetition to really improve that retrieval process. But you can do it. You can improve your memory. I'm curious, have you had success in this? Have you done any of these techniques? Have you noticed any improvement in your memory? Just as a reminder, Olivate exists for one reason. That's to help you succeed in your CRNA program and pass the board exam in the first try. If you like this content and you want to see more of it, please subscribe. Thanks.